From God, who grants success, we ask for success in maintaining good manners always, explanation of harm in being ill-mannered. Let's pray to God for manners in their place, since those who lack them lose out on His grace. It's not as though it's just themselves they harm. They set the world afire, disrupt the calm. A feast was sent down from above one day, without demands or any price to pay. Moses had men who still bemoan their lot. Why weren't some lentils spiced with garlic brought? The host then cleared the feast that had been laid, and each was forced to farm of scythe and spade. Jesus once interceded for a man. A boisterous feast was sent down in God's plan. But then some greedy brats who lacked respect, like beggars, grabbed the most they could collect. Even though Jesus cried, "It's infinite, you greedy fools, you'll not run out of it." Regard this lust as faithless attitude. Before God's feast, a sure ingratitude. When blinded by their greed, these low ingrates cause God to shut to all His mercy's gates. If you withhold zakat, the rain won't fall, and fornication spreads, a plague to all. So what's the source of your deep misery, acting without respect coincidentally? Whoever fails to show respect to God, for robbing of other men deserves the rod. Good manners are what made the heavens bright, an angel sinless, purer than light. Hey everyone, welcome to the Tea House. This is your humble proprietor, Belial. Please sit with me a bit and let's talk. I wanted to open up with that little reading from Sheikh Rumi's the Masnavi, which is one of his most famous poems and work of poetry. Really, today's kind of going to be one of those talking videos where I discuss things that have been on my mind. So feel free to get some tea and let's chat a bit. One thing I've noticed within society and the greater, I'd say like vibe, or maybe it's just the way that people interact with one another, is there's a profound level of disrespect among the populace of my country, the United States, and it may be something that goes further into the entire Western world, or it may be something not entirely unique to the Western world. But there's this certain forgetting of manners that exists, and how you treat one another, and how a man acts, which is something I have noticed. Speaking of my own experiences today, as I woke up in the morning and decided that I would be going on my daily walk to get my coffee, which I am one to do. I enjoy walking. It's one of my favorite activities. And I was not going to go today, but it was 73 degrees out, and I couldn't pass up that opportunity. You can't waste a day like that in the heat of Arizona, especially this time of year. So I decided to make my way out. And through various interactions of meeting with people, it's quite interesting. I spoke with one gentleman who I had met, who was a transient, and he was from some place out of state. We spoke a little bit, and it was nice to speak with him. I had run into him quite by accident. And as I am one to do, I had gotten him some water and trail mix from a local store. My intent there is not to say, oh, I gave charity to somebody, but more or less to explain the goings on of today. So I do so, and I chat with the clerk, who actually happens to be from Turkey, which was very interesting. It was very nice to speak with her, and she offered me salam alaikum, and I said wa alaikum salam, and it's a great conversation. We spoke of Sheikh Rumi and al-Bukhari and other things, and I spoke of my desire to see Java in Indonesia, which is a place I am one to go, and also I would like to see Istanbul and Konya. So we spoke a little bit about that, and I didn't want to hold her up. She had other customers, so I went on my way. My friend had almost left. I think he thought I had just left, but I gave him the food and the water, and we spoke for a little bit. And he was looking for work, and I wished him the best in his journeys. And of course, you have to leave a gentleman with the sunnah handshake, which is both hands, and that's how a gentleman should greet anybody. Anyways, I won't say his name for his privacy, but he was a very nice gentleman. I enjoyed speaking with him. And because of the roundabout way of saying, because of the decision I had made to walk into the store and to speak with this gentleman and the clerk about Rumi. Not speak with the gentleman about Rumi. I just spoke to him about where he was headed and his time in the valley and how that's been going for him. Either way, I decided to, after this interaction, continue my walk to my local coffee spot, which is about a 30-minute, 18-minute walk from where I live. And as I'm walking, I am essentially just, carrying my books. I'm reading the Masnavi right now. I'm also reading a book on Thomas Jefferson, which is about Thomas Jefferson and his relationship with religious freedom, especially the Statute of Virginia. I'm quite a Jeffersonian in my politics. As I've discussed here, I love Jefferson and his natural aristocracy of man, which is a Locke-like idea, but he influenced him heavily. Locke influenced Jefferson. Either way, I'm walking, and this older gentleman in some kind of truck, I would describe, or I don't know, maybe I wasn't paying much attention, but he drives up to me and rolls down his window. And to lay out in context, I'm wearing Cuban pants, white Cuban linen pants, and a white oversized Cuban shirt. I'm wearing those because it's hot. It's Arizona, it's summer, and I refuse to be miserable in the summer. And this gentleman who's wearing his polo shirt and some kind of golf outfit essentially, pulls down his window and starts saying, "You can't dress like that in America." Also, I am wearing my Islamic skull cap, a kufi, which is something I wear everywhere as a point of religious observance and as a personal choice. Also, I happen to like how it looks. Either way, he starts rolled down his window and starts speaking to me, and I say, "Oh, I thought he was just like, hey, have a good day." And I was like, "Oh, have a good day." But I guess I misheard him because he's like, "You can't dress like that in America." Or he said, "We don't dress like that in America." And I was like, "Okay, have a good day." And I just kept walking. And he's like, "Why don't you go back to your country?" And I thought and then I said, "I am an American. I am an Anglo-Saxon." And then I just kept walking. And I said, "Have a good day." And I just kind of laughed it off. Actually, I did laugh. A very mirthful kind of reaction to the situation. But it's something about the failure of the boomer generation and of the American society as a whole, and the idea and the fact that essentially manners are something that's forgotten. The way gentlemen speak to each other is something that I take very seriously in dialogue. The way that a man carries himself is important to me. I identify as I have spoken with the neo-traditionalist school of thinking, whether that be in some kind of political sense in some way or in a religious sense. And I believe that how a man carries himself is very important. To see such a gentleman who is many years my senior, probably about his late 60s to mid 70s, act in such an indignant way is very disheartening for the society as a whole. But it's just a symptom of how people act in general. I see that a lot of times people have forgotten how to be civil, and gentlemen should act like gentlemen, which is strange. I think in this outrage culture kind of way about living, we've simply forgotten how to be, and this very primordial aspect that this current society we live in, the current age, quote unquote, is the current year, is trying very hard to kill, which is the idea of, I discussed in an earlier video of self-agency, honor, and adab, or I suppose in some way it would just be an all-encompassing view of manners. I also respect a man who dresses in a certain way. There's a certain way you should dress as a gentleman, and I honestly just do not, I don't know if the word is respect, but I certainly dislike when people do not dress as if they are serious people, especially men. Something you should dress as if you are a serious person. Either way, I continue my walk, but it stuck with me, not necessarily the prejudice. That's not something I necessarily care about. It's the lack of manners among men, something that is very disheartening. And I think what the younger generation can take out of this, especially the failures of the boomer generations to abide by manners and the failure of their generation to abide by common decency as they slowly become some kind of feral caricature of themselves. I certainly would say that it is the duty of the younger generation to be better. And this is what I kind of talk about, whereas like where people need to express themselves in an authentic manner. You carry yourself with uncompromising dignity, no matter what. You never allow someone else to take your dignity from you. And that's something I spoke with a friend of mine about once. And it is something that I carry deep within myself, which is that this rejection of the indignant nature of American modern society, although I do not like the word modern, as I find it to be a loaded term in general. But as you see, I believe that the best way forward for people is a return to adab, a return to manners. Without manners, we are beasts. And you should seek to be a gentleman, not a beast. And this interaction was quite sad, not from the lens of prejudice, which exists regardless of who you are in society to some extent. Really, it is the lack of maturity found in somebody. Although I did find it somewhat violating to be filmed, as the gentleman decided to lean out of his window, and a very dangerous kind of roundabout way of doing that. A failure to yield at a crosswalk is also something that I find detestable in general. The rules exist for a reason. This is not some kind of grand stand against some kind of injustice and civil disobedience. This is simply selfishness. Now, it is illegal to operate a cell phone while operating a vehicle. It is illegal to not yield at a crosswalk. It's not illegal to film somebody. That's fine in some regard. But he seemed a bit confused when I replied that I am an American and I am an Anglo-Saxon. But either way, the failure of the society to uphold the values of adab, the values of manners and of chivalry, is the crux of this video. And I believe that without manners, we are beasts. You should always seek to be a gentleman. And it is quite disturbing that the society and the ramifications of the social revolutions of the 70s and the 60s have created an environment where manners is something that is heavily going extinct. Anyways, this has been Belial, and thank you for sitting in Belial's tea house. I felt like making this video as kind of a quick discussion of how we should return to traditionalism and the ethics of chivalry and manners. How gentlemen treat one another and how gentlemen interact with one another is important. You don't necessarily have to like one another, but there is a certain aspect to being a man that requires you to act in a way that is dignified. Indignant people are a stain upon society. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me in the tea house, and this is Belial, and thanks for sitting with me. You have a good day.